Micah Logan. I love talking about small businesses and what it takes to grow. Micah is originally from the health and fitness industry. Started as 19 years old, helping, coaching others, and then found himself drawn into just the ownership and leadership and management of these. Fitness businesses and knows a lot about it. Eventually sold that off and now coaches just on a broad spectrum, just on small to medium business and how to grow and some of the stumbling blocks. He has the BOP method that he created, which he feels that can solve any small business issue. It's fascinating the way he goes through it. But it's a great conversation with Micah. He's got such great passion. You could see it, when we talk about it. I always bring up leadership versus management. I've had managers who, thought they were leaders and vice versa, and what the difference is. He also does fractional CEO work, and oftentimes he has to bring his coaching in as well. And just talking about the big difference between leadership and management is a huge stumbling block for many businesses. And of course, the biggest one I feel is just sales. Many feel that they don't. Small businesses feel it's dirty and it's shouldn't have to do it. People should just come. And Mike and I both agree that so you have to create an environment in which it's easy to buy. It's a reframing of sales. But it's a great conversation with Micah Logan. Thanks for listening. Hi, I'm Joey Pinz. People ask me, how did I lose 130 pounds? The quick answer is always discipline. I started my business, wasn't paying attention to my health, was eating too much, drinking too much sweets. My daughter was born. Next thing I know, I'm pre-diabetic, I have hypertension. I knew something had to change. Discipline. I, like many of you, have faced many challenges in your career, in your family, in your life, in your faith. How did you attack them? How did you approach them? How did you solve them, hopefully? It all had to have some degree of discipline. I'm also asked, how did you found and start a tech business? And it lasted over 25 years. Discipline. I was committed to it, enjoyed technology, didn't enjoy some aspects of it, but knew it was necessary. Discipline. Our podcast mission, how do we use discipline to better ourselves and society? Join me, please, as I talk to interesting people and discuss how they use discipline in their family and their passion and their careers and how it helped them. Our podcast vision, growth through learning from others. Joey Pinz Disciple Conversations. It'll be light and serious. Join us, please. Thank you for consideration. My goodness, Micah Logan, thank you so much for your time. I'm very, very excited to talk to you. So, is the fitness industry very different from other businesses?
Well, what I'll say is that in the fitness industry, there is a lot of competition. There, at last count, right before COVID, there was something approximating 400,000 trainers in the U.S. But that's just trainers. It doesn't include health clubs, facilities, studios, boutiques, and other concepts. So it is one of the most highly competitive industries, and unless you have like some sort of significant financial backer, you independents do well, but it's very competitive.
Independence versus the big box we see all over the place. And of course, it's right after the holidays right now. So this is the peak season, correct?
It is. It depends on when. So I think that the assumption is that for so the overall health and wellness industries is broken up into segments. So you have your big box gyms, which are your Planet Fitnesses, your Lifetime Fitness, your LA Sports Club, things like this. You have boutiques, which service multiple different categories of consumers. So you have your boutique personal training studios, you have yoga brands, you have more cardio based options like Orange Theory, hit options. And so the answer to does the new year bring in a lot of people? It's generally to big box gyms. That's where the focus is typically for New Year's, because that's the low hanging fruit for people who do nothing, right?
Hmm.
They still don't necessarily want to hire someone yet until they fail on their own, and then oftentimes what we'll see a wave of people come in a little later after January, so maybe like late February, early March. There's a big boom in like the instructive services in fitness.
Hmm. But Micah, I mean, I see some of the prices at these big boxers, like $10 a month. I mean, how are they making money? I mean, is it a pure volume play?
Yeah, so when it comes to the the low priced, high volume type business like Planet Fitness, the thought is that we're going to charge you $10 a month, and as a result of the price, you're going to use it either regularly or as a passing thought. It's
Mm,
low enough where you can forget to use it for months on end, which is what they
mm,
bank on. In order
mm,
for a Planet Fitness to be profitable, they need to have about 100,000 members. Now, imagine if they all showed up at the same time. So that wouldn't work. So it means that their business model is based off of there being a significant portion of their membership base actually not attending.
mm. You know, in software as a service, I'm in technology. We have something called, zombie customers where they pay for it but don't use it. And it's obviously nice revenue. And so I could see how at that price point people can go months and not do it. It's a very interesting model. But you talk about per square foot revenue and the ROI in your model with fitness. Talk to me about that.
Well, I actually sold my health and wellness company back in October,
Ah,
um,
wow.
and I've since then moved on to some other things, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But
Yeah.
in terms of per square foot model, when I was operating my company, for me, it was more about how much money can I make in in per square foot gross revenue compared to my hourly operating cost. That's how I figured it out. And so I think that this could work in most businesses, but when it comes to retail type businesses, brick and mortars, or in-store businesses, per operational hour, based off of how much you're spending across the board on rent, on salary, on insurance, tax, whatever your total OPEX costs are, does your revenue per square foot per hour at least you know exceed that by about 40%. I
Hmm.
had a gross profit goal of at a minimum 45 to 50 to 55%, depending on the time of the year and how much work I wanted to do.
You're telling me that these fitness clubs that operate at almost 50% margin? That's incredible. I wouldn't think that's the case. Well, I guess labor costs, so the overhead is what? The equipment, the rent, and labor.
Essentially, yeah, that's it. So in an instructive service based model, the majority of your labor, as you can imagine, are on the instructors. The equipment
Mm,
typically is low enough where it's a fully cash based business. In my the business that I sold, my cost to do business on a regular basis was rent and low cost equipment, because my model was based off of personal and training. So the actual
mm,
service, the delivery vehicle, were the were the personal training program sessions, and so the tools that we use for that were I bought those things in cash. They were low cost pieces of equipment because you had to do more program design. So the features of my company was the fact that we were able to deliver personal training programming to customers who wanted it to see change, using equipment that was very low cost. So
hmm.
in that case, yeah. So there's almost zero cost for, not zero cost for equipment, but it's very low. In terms of the big box gyms, where I call you're renting your membership is renting space in the club. So
Hmm.
in those clubs, they have fairly large amounts of lease payments, because they have to accommodate big crowds, right? Big box gym has to have more than one chest press, more than one leg curl machine, more than one dumbbell rack. They have to have tons of dumbbells, right? So they wrap all that all up into one massive, lease cost that could exceed $1 million.
So why get out of the business, Micah? Is it a tough business? Is it why get out?
So I've been in the health and wellness industry for over 20 years.
Yeah.
I believe there's chapters to life, and I think that for me, I had gone as far as I was willing to go in the health and wellness business. Um, I I enjoyed every moment of it. I love coaching, and I love the people and the relationships that I formed over the years. But at the same time, I had other interests. So I got in when I was fairly young. I started at about 19, and you know, I decided that over the years, as you're running a business, you start formulating other. You're like, hey, I didn't know that I was good at this or I could do this. So, for
Mm,
instance, I was terrible at business at the beginning, but then I slowly improved because nobody has a business coach when they're growing up,
right.
um, unless they have a business coach when they're growing up, right? Their dad or their mom or something who was in business. And so for me, I eventually decided to pursue other passions. I was good at building businesses. People would come up to me and ask me about business because they knew that I was operating multi-unit retail sites of my own company that I founded. Um, and so I would always get questions about business operations or marketing or scaling and things like this. And so I started, taking on the odd business coach at that particular time. And then eventually I was asked, I started a podcast that talks about small business and how businesses can actually grow and scale while building the foundation of what it means to have a good operating business that's sustainable in the future, because large businesses have this stuff already mapped out.
Mm,
The biggest gap in the country, where 99.9% of business in the US are small businesses, are the fact that they don't have systems and processes to actually implement that they can structure to be successful and go to the next level. So I decided that I wanted a podcast to put that information out there. And then based on the podcast, I got appointed as the fractional CEO of a startup company, it's a manufacturing firm. And then when I sold my company back in October 2023, I kind of went full on business coaching and um, the fractional executive work, and that's kind of been my passion. And then recently, I I just started writing a lot more than I used to. These are all the passions that were slowly brewing over the
yeah.
years. So good reasons to leave. And then eventually, I had about 3 weeks ago, Forbes magazine reached out to me, and they were like, "We've been looking at your stuff, and we were told about you." I don't know who the "you" is in that sentence, but then they were like, "Would you like to write for us as a contributing writer?" And so I was like, "Yeah, of course." So I just started that as well. So there's been a lot of ever since I sold the company and kind of refocused and just kind of pursued some of these other passions. It made a way for new stuff to come in. So I'm sure you have a lot of questions on that stuff I just said.
Yeah, it's interesting because I heard you say that you really help people get into better shape. You talk about this one person who was depressed and you got them there and you really loved that kind of one-on-one coaching. And then you eventually kind of, went into operating, and running the business, similar to myself and many in the tech field, where we started as engineers and we like to program, we like to code, and then eventually got to the point where in order to grow, you got to move into sales and you got to move into business operations. You can no longer do that anymore. And I think it's a similar trend with you. And so now you branched out and now you're doing these coaching, the more of the business coaching, but the business itself, you talk about, you had some great terms like the mayor of fitness and the BOP method. Do you still hold truth to these?
Yeah, so my entire coaching methodology is based on the BOP method, which sprung from my time in fitness building my business. And so I used to, I spent thousands of dollars and thousands of miles traveling and traversing the country, going to conferences, listening to people who were the best in their respective fields in the industry just be good. I used to sit in my hotel room, and while everybody else is kind of going out, cocktail hour, doing all this other stuff, I would basically be game planning in my hotel room for the 3 days that would be at this conference. I literally would go there, I would order room service, I would eat in my room, And I came up with these books, and I would just strategize. I love business strategy. To me, it is something enjoyable. For other people, it's annoying, because it's it requires a high level of intuition and the ability to kind of see around the corner. And so, like, but for me, like, applying some of these strategies was really important. So I spent a lot of time doing that. And so I eventually developed the BOP method. And the BOP method is a framework that I developed where you can solve almost every problem in a small business by taking it through a filter of how to think about and organize the problems that they come up and lead to solutions. Both my podcast and the BOP method that I came up with are specifically related to the action of implementing what you need to change in your business after you run it through that filter today or tomorrow. I don't like waiting. I think the problem is with a lot of small businesses that they just push things off that seem complicated because there is no filter, no framework to pass it through. But once you pass it through a framework that allows you to, okay, go step 1 through step 10 and then implement it, then that challenging problem becomes just steps towards getting to where you want to be. So there's that. And then you mentioned coming up with the BOP framework. You also talked about I think I'm blanking here for a minute, but
Well, the BOP method. Let's talk about it.
sure.
Just moving your passions into business, and how they start to change a bit. So, what is BOP?
Yeah, so the BOP method, I call it, it's just a framework for how to think about problem solving in businesses and how to run all businesses through the lens or through the filter of this specific framework. It's not a woo woo granola philosophy on how you should think and access certain mental acuity processes in your brain. It's a specific framework that you plug problems into so that you can get an implementable result tomorrow or today. And so it starts with blueprinting the problem, right? So you have to first lay the foundation, and that foundation is the blueprinting is the foundation upon which every strategy and action in the business is actually going to rest. So every problem has a foundation, and so you have to first start with laying that foundation of what that's going to be. So if you think about blueprinting, it's a vital component of understanding your brand, your formula. What is it that you're trying to communicate? I'm a big fan of. Are you familiar with Clayton Christensen?
I am.
So you probably remember the case study of the milkshake. His client McDonald's, and so he used to talk about what job do customers hire your business to do. And so I've taken that. So if you're watching this and you want to know more about it, if you go to the Harvard Business Review and you look at, you search for marketing malpractice, the white paper will come up. And in that paper, he talks about how to not just see customers through customers' eyes. It's why do customers hire your job? What job do your customers hire your business to fulfill? And so I wrote it's funny because I wrote an article, one of my first articles in Forbes last week when I first started, was I use the example of a barber. And I say that, if you think that your job as a barber is just cutting hair or trimming beards or giving people lineups, I think that you're shortchanging yourself. I think fundamentally we all know or feel that what we do in business is a little bit broader or greater than what we actually do or why people pay us. But it's hard for people to put those things into words. And so if you think about a barber, then you think about the fact that the barber is there for every major life event. Weddings, funerals, your big presentation at work. They're there for perhaps the birth of your kid, for any parties you have to go to. Every single life-changing event, the barber is actually engaged with you because you have to look your best to be there. So then what is the barber's job? What are you paying them to do? You're paying the barber to help you be presentable to the world. The same way that you would trying to educate yourself or prepare yourself, the barber is a part of how you actually face the world.
Hmm.
So if the barber crafts their business and their message around helping you face the world or being prepared for the world, you're more likely to go to the barber who you hire to do that job to help you face the world. And so that's kind of the framework. That's kind of how I think about like laying the blueprint. And then the optimized part is of this BOP framework is once you kind of understand some of those elements in your business, you then run that through an optimization. So you then do a brainstorming session. How can I take this problem, either whether it's a brand problem, a marketing problem, or a people problem, a sales problem, whatever it is, and then you brainstorm exactly, okay, well, let me isolate this down to just a few points. You have to refine it. And so the key is to be wholly focused on streamlining. So this is not the identification part. So you just went through that with the blueprint and laying the foundation of what the problem is. Now you're going to be streamlining what exactly the issue is. So in order to do this, you have to do analysis. You have to understand what's working, what's not. You have to do some refinement. And then you have to do some automation. So if there's opportunity to automate in your business, you should take it. But otherwise, you should refine what you're doing so that it makes the most sense and you can explain it as quickly as possible without having to launch into a long period of trying to figure out why did I make this change. And then the B part is position. I'm all about action and moving people forward today and making change today. And the thing that kills small business owners, in my opinion, is that they don't implement. All of us have the books. All of us have heard the podcast, and all of us have seen The Founder, right? So it's like that's not the issue. The issue is how do we go from all this other stuff, this conceptual stuff, to actually putting things forward. You run it through the framework, then you refine it, you analyze it, and you come with the highest order solution to the problem, and then you position it for success. You implement it. And then, of course, I have a framework for implementing it as well.
And no matter the issue, you feel it can be resolved through the blueprint optimizing and positioning.
Yeah, well, let's take a problem. Let's take sales as an issue. You're not getting
the small business problems, right?
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's blueprint the problem. The problem is that you're not able to attract the web traffic or the clients that you want. So what's the fundamental problem? Am I saying the right things to get the people that I actually want to come in? Every business has a message. Your message is less relevant than the context of your message to the people who are hearing it, right? So you may believe that you do one thing. In the case of the barber, it's cutting hair. But what the person who's buying it believes is the only really thing that matters. So does your message match why people want to engage with your business? Well, unless you go through the BOP framework, you're not going to, well, you could, I guess, otherwise you're hearing this podcast, so you could do it now, is you can then run that through this framework and say, well, am I foundationally giving the right message to the people who are listening to what I'm saying? And then the person's going to say, well, okay, well, a little bit. Or if you've ever had a person say, well, I was confused by your website, or can you explain this to me? It means that they didn't really understand clearly what you were saying from the beginning. And then I would take that and I would refine it. What is it that the person said that they didn't understand when we were trying to communicate with them? Did they not understand our sales process? So many companies hide their sales process. My question is, if you take your sales process and turn it from this like malevolent action that happens behind the scenes where you're just trying to get a person to sit down with you without telling them that they're going to ultimately sit down with you, then you're fooling yourself. Instead, you should turn your sales process, for instance, into steps to engage the firm. Okay, you want to do business with us. We want to do business with you. So here's the 5 things that are going to happen from you to go from prospect to regular customer. Here's how we work. Not here's how we sell you. Here's how we work. You're going to talk to this person. This person's then going to set this appointment for you. We're going to evaluate what the issues are in your business. We're going to blah, blah, blah. Whatever the 5 steps are. And then, of course, you if you don't do it already, if your website doesn't reflect this, if the language that your sales staff use doesn't reflect this, saying things like, "We're going to take you through our process," versus let's have a consultation so we can figure out exactly what product fits for you. If you're not saying the same thing, you then have to position. You then have to take this and then you have to implement it and roll it out to everyone. And everyone who are either managers or employees who are going to speak the same language or engage in the implementation need to be on the same page. And you have to have a framework for not just implementing it, but also testing that after it's deployed. So I think it works for every problem.
Mm. I could say in the tech field, you mentioned sales, and I kind of snickered and say it's most of the problems. I mean, in the tech industry, you have these tech-led CEOs, right, that are really good at engineering and solving issues with technology, but they're not good at sales. The used car salesperson, right? They just think it's dirty and you're trying to deceive people. And the only way they're going to grow is to adopt a sales philosophy. Do you find that as an obstacle as well?
Can you say that last part again? I'm sorry.
Do you find that when working with small business as an obstacle as well, just kind of looking at sales as a necessary ingredient to grow, or perhaps the primary?
Yeah. So I don't. I tell businesses not to sell because
Hmm.
honestly, you don't need to. What you need to do is you need to present yourself as a solution to the problem. And I think that if you understand why you've gone into business, if you've built a really good product, whether you're a SaaS company, whether you're a home service based company, whether you are a manufacturing firm, your job is solution based. It's not problem creation.
Hmm.
You've already created the solution to a problem. So from where I sit,
Hmm.
if you teach your people how to focus on solutions, the ideal solution, and why your product is the ideal solution to this problem, you'll never sell a day in your life, and you won't need to. And that will imbue them with confidence because what you tell them is, we want you to make a professional recommendation to a person who's to looking for a solution to their problem. So the professional recommendation is where you come in. We're not asking you to go out there and try to um, walk a person through the 7 steps of overcoming doubt and get them to say yes to everything you say.
Hmm.
I think that if you're focused on problem solving and you become more of a assistant buyer and you show them how as a professional recommendation, um, using your product, your service will achieve the result that they want, and you're able to understand the job that they hire you to do, then sales will skyrocket. I used to tell people who came into, like, as an example, as a story, that okay, so one time we had a customer come in, and this customer I knew was interested in our training. Now, we were never the cheapest, and we were never the middle class. We were always slightly higher in our pricing. She said, "Well, I can't afford your prices." And then she said, "Well, I do know that the Y charges this." And I said, "Okay, I understand." And instead of launching into this whole sales type of
Comparison.
trying to recapture her and show her the value, I simply said to her, "I think you should try the Y." Because if you're looking for training at this price point, you're going to be able to get the basics, you're going to sweat, and you may have a great time there. Absolutely. Go check them out. I said, but if you want to train here, we map out for you where you want to go from where you are today. We show you how to get there. Not just that, our program is based off of, and all the elements of the program, I told her. I said, so this is how we make the decision about how to charge. These are the problems that we'll solve for you in the rough timeline that you're looking for. I said, but you should go try them out. So she goes and she tries them out. And then a few days later, I get a call and she says, okay, I want to sign up with you because I went there and it was exactly the quality that we talked about that she went there. Now, that is not casting aspersions on every trainer at the Y. This is just saying that this particular experience for her was exactly what we thought it was going to be. And so we focus on the solution to the problem, on what she was actually looking to hire us for. She wanted to have a good time with people with good personalities, but also who knew what they were doing, because it was like a third place for her. It wasn't home, it wasn't work. It was this community that we had built. And really, that's what we were bringing her into. But we understood the assignment.
Micah, should sales be creating an environment in which it's easy to buy?
It's funny that you say that. One of my favorite statements that I kind of came up with, where I use with my business coaching clients all the time, is make doing business easy with you, and people will do business with you. You know, it's like I've never seen. So small business owners have this habit of making things hard for themselves in which to do business. As an example, I have a business coaching client. This person was thinking about, they were like, okay, my customer, so this is my package, this is my program, this is what I do, this is what I offer. They're a product-based business. And so he said, well, I have a customer asking me if I can do this, but I don't really normally do that. Is this something that I should, I don't know. I don't know if I want to take this. I don't know if I want to call him back. And I'm like, dude, is this something that would dramatically detract from what you're doing now? He said, no. Is it something that would increase your labor cost and therefore drive your margin down? He said, no, I can do it when I'm doing everything else. I said, so then just do it. Like, don't step in the way of someone saying yes to you because, you principally want to be doing. Now, am I a big fan of people staying within their lane and niching down and being a specialist? I am. But in this case, it was more of a line extension to what they were already doing. And because of that, they end up growing this extension because more people wanted it when they did it. So like just saying yes and bringing customers on the ride, being collaborative like that is huge, because just like a focus group, you have an active focus group of people who are paying you to try to figure out how to make your product or your service the best, right? SaaS. This is how Apple built a $1 trillion business. Their whole business is built on using customers as a focus group. It's wild.
Yeah, and that reflects in their product. So when you do your business coaching, Micah, do you often have to kind of train them on being a better leader?
Yes, we get to that. The first thing is plugging holes, but like in terms of leadership, yeah, the answer is yeah. I often have conversations with business coaching clients when it comes to what employees want. Well, let's just take the case of what employee request. There are some employee requests that you simply cannot honor because it goes against the fundamental tenets of your business, right? Like every business should have core values, or at least theoretically they should have core values. And so some of my business clients, we've had to talk about that. What are your core values? If one of your core values is people, what can you do to bring them along? And if you fundamentally believe that you want your employees to get better professionally, financially, and personally while they're with you, then the result of that will be that you'll find a way to help them become better at their jobs and ultimately happier, because it's just going to make your company better. Right. And so I often hear talk about hiring practices out there. And I tell people all the time, it doesn't matter to me who you are, where you come from. What matters to me is if you can do the job. And can you do the job at a high level? Now I'll take all of these things equally. And it's like whoever is, even if you're 1% better than the other person to your left or to your right, that's who I'm hiring. I know we like to think that, well, if everyone is equal in terms of like what they see in their resumes and they have the exact right experience, it's like, no one has the exact right experience across the board. If one person has the one thing that I think that the team is missing, that's who you go with, right? So like Being a leader is about making the highest call morally and the best call for your business, right? Those things go hand in hand. And so we have a lot of conversations about that and how you can try to give employees what they want and what they need, recognizing what they need, and not just being a boss, but being a mentor, right? Because mentors actually look to see what it is that you need to grow, and then they help you with guidelines on how to get there.
What's the difference between a leader and a manager?
So I don't believe this. This is. Have you ever heard the term? I'm sure you have. Servant leadership.
Mm.
I'm not a big fan of servant leadership because I think leaders lead. Leaders are step in front of the crowd and they move the business, company, or whatever, the army forward. But they also bring the people with them as they're moving forward. Managers are more task driven, more to-do list driven individuals who often have the unique quality of being able to organize the day-to-day and understand the vision and the guidelines in which they operate. And they're excellent at deploying specific, regimented, and structured tasks. And they require that structure in order to thrive. Leaders can move the ball forward without the structure, and they have the ability to set a vision or a course, develop the path to get there, and to be able to help other people and inspire them to go after that vision or that course they've set in the same direction. And then they let the managers help them implement the structure or the framework on a day-to-day basis because they're typically better at using that crystallized method of delivery and repeating that over and over again. But leaders typically set the course. They're out in front, but they're bringing everybody with them.
I've hired managers who are excellent managers, but think they're leaders. How do you work with them?
Yeah, that is funny. I've seen that a million times myself.
Yeah.
And those people think that they're leaders because they're a manager. Right. They don't understand that leadership starts with who you are as a person versus what you can do. So I feel like management is more like what you can do. Leadership is who you are. And do I believe that you have the availability? The best trait of a leader is belief, is the ability to get people to believe and to buy in, right? And so I think what ultimately happens with managers is they forsake the concept that one of their jobs is buy-in. And leaders understand that you need to have people buy into a vision always to move them towards a vision. And I feel like managers typically get so bogged down with the day-to-day that they don't understand that part of their job is to get people to not just do the work, but to believe in the work that they're doing. And then once they start not believing in the work, then your job as a manager is to bring them back in the fold. And that requires a combination of skills. And we've heard it and it's been written about a lot, which is you have to listen. What is a person really saying to you when they're saying this? Let's take baseball, right? Are you putting people in the best batting order to succeed? Right? You don't put a DH as a leadoff hitter. You don't put a leadoff hitter in the 8th spot. As a manager, your job is to put people in the best position. Sometimes managers lack the fundamental intuition to understand the structure of skill set development in individuals. And it's just like, here's a job function, here's what we need, and the company does this. And maybe it's a combination of the company's fault for not leading managers. And then that filters to the manager, and then they don't lead their employees, right? And so there could be a little bit of that. But the other thing is that managers have to understand that within their team, they are the leader, and I don't want to say regardless of what the company says, because they should always follow company procedure, but at the same time, they should understand that that's a framework to, if there's a question, and I always, so in the law, they have tests for everything, right? And the point of the test is, does what has happened that there's no precedent for pass this test or not, so that we can figure out if it's lawful.
Mm.
In a business, you have a manager who's managing a team, and one way to think about this is what I'm asking the employee to do, passing the business test, which best for business or worse for business. Because if I can get the productivity out of the business by reforming or reshaping the day-to-day a little bit more, then that's what I'm going to do, because it passed the business test. And so I guarantee you, if I'm in the boardroom and I have to answer to the board about the decisions I've made, and I fundamentally tell them that, well, this is to pass the business test, what are they going to, and I've been able to prove my productivity, and this manager over there just has everyone in the structure, even if the company is not built like that, whose model are they going to accept? That's my thought.
You mentioned fractional, like CEO and fractional leadership that you do. There's a manufacturing product I heard you talk about in building as well. When you're doing this work, Micah, beg your pardon. When you're doing that work, do you find that you have to do business coaching as well to the team as well? Do you actually find yourself doing that work you're being a leader, but you're also having to consult some of the team as well on how to be better?
Yeah, for sure. So fractional work is definitely a combination, because you're coming in as a contracted part-time executive in a firm that needs that position. They often don't have any of the framework, or a very light framework, for which you will be hired to install. And so that requires leadership, in the sense that you're bringing in a vision. Your position didn't exist previously, or if it did, and I assume in not as capable a way as you have suggested to whoever's bringing you in that you're going to bring it into. And so it does require leadership and coaching, because oftentimes you're installing things that people don't understand or connect with, and they don't understand the reason why. And so for me, I'd rather have a million conversations about why, and then show a person what's going to be the result of implementing this, instead of just implementing it. Right? You start. I'm a big fan of answering the big questions when you start, and then going full force into implementation. So when I do fractional work, that's what my focus is, right? It's like, we're going to implement it, but let's answer the big questions first, and we'll talk about why and what it's going to look like, and then we're going to implement it.
In
and
your
so
business,
you do end up having a coach, yeah.
Yeah, you have to, right? Because you have that expertise. Who is the perfect candidate for you in your business coaching?
So business coaching, that's a good question. So I work with people anywhere from about very small businesses, like 150,000, all the way up to $1 million. Typically a small business owner, and they are looking to make a next step in multi 6-figure growth or 7-figure growth. And I've worked with companies on both levels. And so we're looking for small business owners who are typically generating, I would say the average, they're generating between about $300,000-$400,000 to about $2 million. But again, I've worked with outliers who are bigger and a little smaller, and they need to bring their whole company into alignment with what it requires to grow. So they may have some processes in place, but not all of them. They may have some idea about, or they may have been able to hustle their way to their first $1 million, but now they need to actually implement some structure to grow. So there's that piece as well.
And who is not a good candidate? I mean, these small businesses want to grow. They need to get a business coach to grow. But who's not a good candidate?
If you're not coachable, don't call me. If you're not an implementer, don't call. Like, you have to. So on the fractional side, I help implement the work, right? You're actually doing the work. On the business coaching side, I'm guiding you to do the work. So for both understanding and for and so that you can obviously have a part of the growth. So if you're not an implementer, if you're not a person who's looking to make significant change, if you're a once done, always done kind of person, or this is how it's always been done kind of person, it ain't gonna work. I'm looking for people who are moldable and coachable, people who are intellectually curious, business owners who are
Hmm.
looking for the most optimal way to do it, and then of course thinking. Remember, we talked about Clayton Christensen's theory, his business hypothesis, the job to be done.
Hmm.
That's an abstract thought that requires you to think abstractly about how that works.
Hmm.
And if you're the kind of person that's going to be like, well, I don't know about this. I don't know if it's, I don't know if what we do is so esoteric that we need to kind of go down this route, that you fundamentally you've lost lost the ball already. SaaS companies are a great example of the job that needs to be done. They all do it. Whether they understand exactly what their job people hire them for or not is where the business coaching comes in. You would be
Hmm.
surprised, Joey, surprised how many business owners don't even know their brand promise, or their brand promise is misaligned to what they actually do. You would be stunned how many mission statements are void of specificity. How many people can't tell you what they do in less than 30 seconds, in less than 15 seconds. If you can't explain what your company is and what you do in less than 30 seconds or less than 15 seconds, then you have no idea what you do. And I'm not saying that you're not going to be successful in business. I'm just saying that it means that you're missing structure to help you really truly understand what you're delivering to the marketplace. And that only comes from understanding business at a foundational level. Now, we start businesses with high hopes and then we hold on to those high hopes, but then we lose the foundation, the foundational aspects of the trees continuing to push those high hopes. And when people start paying us and they continue to pay us, we move further and further away from those fundamentals.
Hmm.
But the thing that made Bill Belichick, except for the last 3 years, the best coach in NFL history, is that it's blocking and tackling. The
Hmm.
first thing they start off in Patriots training camp is blocking and tackling. Vince Lombardi, no matter if you were a veteran or a rookie, training camp the first day, who hold up a football and say this is a football. And small businesses lose that. I bring it back.
For those small business owners who think, they don't need a coach, Tiger Woods had a coach, Michael Jordan had a coach. I mean, we all, I know one of the biggest things that helped me, Micah, was before I hired a coach was just peer groups, being able to get away from the business and be with people that are in similar, circumstance with you, so you don't feel like you're on an island anymore. And that was, for me, that was the first step, because it's for me, it was easier to work on the business when I was away from the business. When
Mm-hmm.
I'm there in the day to day, you're kind of putting out fires. So getting out, joining a peer group, and then from those peer groups, getting coaches, which really helped me. Your thoughts on that?
I 100% agree with that. I think that, so Thomas Sowell, the great economist, has a quote. It says, "It takes an immense amount of knowledge to understand the extent of your own ignorance." And I think that that's what coaching helps with. It shortens that curve of ignorance and gets you to the point where you can actually ask the relevant question. There's so many small business owners out there who are blindly operating and they don't even know the question to ask to get a result that will lead them to success.
Mm.
It's like, okay, not what is successful, what makes us a success. It's what is the question that I need to ask to even get on the path to
Mm.
success. And once you're on the path, what kind of question do I need to ask outside of the technical aspect of what I do? But you can be a great coder, Python, all that stuff. But if you don't know what the basics are of what it is that you should ask about business, then how could you ever be successful? The thing that makes a large business and a small business outside of the federal government definition of large and small businesses and their financial backers and their financial fortitude, if we take away a little bit of that financial structure and look at the core of what those businesses are, they are businesses that are able to operate the fundamentals consistently day in, day out in a repeatable process, in a repeatable system-based process, like close to 100% accurately. That's what makes a large business ultimately a large business that turns. But every large business was a small business. So what made it a large business is that they've been able to operationalize their delivery systems every single day in the same way, get the same result, and people can experience the same thing. One of the biggest issues for the general public and consumers and small businesses is that they get different things every time they come to a small business. It's like, how can they bank on what they're going to get the exactly what they want every time they come to the business? It's always slightly off. Or the business was open at 10 yesterday and today it's 11:30, or I don't understand what the website is asking me to do, or the website is cluttered, or no one's really understanding what I'm asking them truly, or like there's all these things. They said they were going to call me or email me today, they didn't do it. Large businesses, they don't make those errors for the most part. They say they're going to call you tomorrow between 1 and 3. They may give you a range that's annoying to you, but they call you between that time. And then if they don't, they have a manager that holds the person who's supposed to do that accountable. And then that manager gets held accountable by efficiency ratings about how many of those promises that they actually have kept. They have metrics, KPIs, key performance indicators for everything that they're supposed to deliver, down to the customer transaction, the customer experience, and customer engagement. These are things that I teach in business coaching to small businesses, because once you understand the metrics, once you understand the knowledge, once you understand how much money you're kind of, just throwing down the toilet, once you understand how many people actually engage you versus how many you think engage you, changes the game. It's transformative.
It is. It is. And it's exciting. I could tell by your passion. It's exciting to help businesses with that transformation.
It is. It's so funny because one of the things I always try to, so I had a small business client. This person was losing 50% revenue cumulatively, especially over last year. My very first question to him was, well, what have you done to gain more customers over the last 18 months? And he told me that he hadn't even gotten a lead in 3 months. So he's gone these 2 months, 3 months, 3-month cycles without having any leads. Well, and those are leads; those aren't even converted customers. So it's like, well, how do you expect that you're going to ultimately grow? Let's think about this logically, right? And it's like, you have people who are paying you, and so you're living off of the retained customers that you have, but you have no plan to fill this bucket up. So, we increased his leads by about 2,500% after implementing a system in his business over the last 18 months. We did it in 90 days. We were able to bring his revenue losses down from 50% down to about 7% by just plugging some of the holes of the things that he was doing, and by focusing him on the mission, on his brand promise, which he didn't even realize that he didn't even know. He had a message he was communicating to a customer base, to like 4 different customer bases. So he's talking to 4 different people, but he provides a product for one of the 4, even though it's loosely applicable indirectly to the other 3. And it's like, well, but where do you get your money from? I get 80% of my money from this one person. So why are you speaking to the 3 people that you don't even get money from? Or are you getting the 20% of your revenue? It's a reverse Pareto principle.
Amazing. Excuse me, Micah. So
Sure.
I started my tech business in 93, just south of you in New Haven.
Oh, nice.
And I was working hard. In the beginning, it's very, very tough. You're working 14, 15-hour days. You're trying to get some clients in. And I was putting my talk about fitness. I was not the mayor of fitness, so I was drinking, too much soda and pizza and bad food, and up late at night, and I got myself to 340 pounds, and the
Wow.
doctor said to me, my daughter was just born. If you don't lose the weight, you're not going to see your daughter graduate, and it just hit me hard. And
Mm.
so I spent the next 6, 7 months, lost about 130 pounds. And people ask me how, like there's some secret, like there's some, silver bullet. And I said, the one word answer, Micah, is discipline. That's
Mhm.
it. You have to get focused. You have to get disciplined. And, I made some realizations in my life. I wonder how discipline plays a role in your life, Micah Logan.
Yeah, so I have always, well, for over 2 decades, I've been an entrepreneur. And as you know, Joey, one of the reasons why you gained all that weight, I'm sure, is because you understood one fundamental fact, which is if you don't eat, you don't get fed.
Mm,
As entrepreneurs, we are hunters.
yeah.
We eat what we kill. And
Yeah.
in order to continue to eat, you have to continue to kill. And in order to do that, you have to set out early in the morning and come back late at night. You have to go out and be able to set traps. You have to be able to go where you didn't go and remember where you went yesterday to fish or to hunt, and to be able to understand that in order to keep a balance in both how much food that you're hunting to bring into the house and um, where you've already previously been hunting and trying to get food, that you have to have some time in between that so that the population of what you just hunted and brought in can regrow. These are all, obviously, this is a metaphor for um, structure and discipline. And
Mm,
so, as an entrepreneur, I have always thought that it's up to me every single day to do what I can to provide for my family. I have 2 children, 2 teenagers, and my wife. And so, in my house, I understand that discipline for me is about the focus to do the things that ultimately drive the results that I want on a daily basis. And the only way that I can think about the the results of my actions are, what is it going to do? What does a month from now look like, or next week look like? What does next year look like, or 6 months look like if I don't do this? Could
mm,
I sleep until 11 every day? Yeah. And then go to the gym? Sure. And then go get a latte at a coffee shop? Absolutely. I don't drink coffee, but I could do it, right?
oh, dear.
Um, and that would be a use of my time. There are many uses of your time, but
Mm,
there's only one way that you can successfully use your time. And I do believe that there's a difference between successfully using your time and unsuccessfully using your time. In order
mm,
to successfully use your time, it means that you're spending your time in a manner that has a future result, both for you and for the people that are in your circle of care, right? People who you're taking care of. And so discipline for me is a function of understanding what my assignment is as the man of my household, and the father and the husband, and personally, I remember someone asked me before about something about mediocrity, and I said I would rather die than be mediocre. But the only way to not be mediocre is to separate yourself with work ethic and discipline. And so from where I sit,
mm,
I think that what I do every day matters. And I believe that everything matters. How I work, how I speak, how I write, how I live, and I'll regret it. I don't know. I think I would regret not having a structure to my day the next day. Honestly, I
mm.
could have used as when you have entrepreneur brain, whether you retire and you're a snowbird like you are now, right? Or you're like me, you can't. I think one trait of us is that we have the inability to turn off our brain and to stop thinking about things
Mm,
that could be done or things that could be accomplished, right? Or how things that could be made better. And I think that you need to embrace that and and capture it in a framework and to structure it, to structure that. So I've decided to structure that my brain power into something that is positive every day, and to make some change, and whether it pays off, and I have the patience to see it through, right? Discipline is also about patience, because if you're impatient, then you'll never achieve your desired result, because despite what the movies show about entrepreneurs, you're a 30 or 40 year millionaire, right?
Right.
You're
And it
not
happened overnight.
yeah, exactly. That's right. You're a
Yeah.
30 or 40 year overnight success.
Yeah. 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 It's amazing. I have this ongoing, thesis that discipline is a spectrum, and some of the things you brought up: strictness, structure, focus, patience, restraint, obedience. It's just all part of it. It's amazing how everybody views it differently, because sometimes I get really big pushback, Mike. Oh, we don't need discipline. That means punishment. It's militant, and there's no wrong answer, right? It's just, I just wonder that's what I think I use to. I'm not the king of discipline, by the way. There's plenty of areas where I fall short, but that's what I did to lose the weight, and I noticed that, and I try to use it in other areas as well. What motivates you, Micah?
Um, that's funny. What motivates me? Two things: my family, and being the best version of myself that I can be. Because I don't know what
Hmm.
that is.
Hmm.
I have no idea. But the only way I'll know is if I continue down the pursuit of the path that I mentioned to you earlier, which was, it takes an immense amount of knowledge to understand the extent of your own ignorance. How ignorant am I? I have no idea. Um, how smart am I? I have no idea. I know that I'm smart enough to know that I'm not smart enough,
Right.
and that's frustrating. Um, and I know that I'm smart enough to know that there are people who are younger and older, um, and with less discipline, that have accomplished more to me. So how is that possible? I have no I have no idea. And what makes like, these are the things I think I'm trying to understand. And I also understood that, we talked about earlier in our conversation, my departure from kind of selling that company, the fitness industry, and to kind of go into this path that I'm on now. I pursued something that only became a passion of mine when I pursued a path that I wasn't expecting to go down. So
Hmm.
I didn't intend to be a trainer to start my career that way. It ultimately ended up that way for over 2 decades. But then during that process, I understood that I was good at business, and that I had something that I felt like other people didn't have, which was the discipline, but also the ability to understand the nuances of business. And I'm kind of a student of business myself. And so I pursued that, right? And so
Hmm.
I think that for me, it's been a constant pursuit of things that I believe make me a better version of myself. That's motivating to me. Trying to understand what I don't know, and then trying to learn more of that thing.
Keeping that humility and humbleness, and um, I find, Mike, as I get older, a little bit older than you, I believe, I have more questions than I have answers. And part of the reason why I love having these conversations. How do you measure success?
Yeah, good question. Um, you know, success to me is this umbrella term. Well, it's this umbrella application for life, but that's not, in my opinion, how success should be viewed. It should be viewed in all the elements, in each element of the aspect of life that you personally engage in. Right? So you can be success monetarily and be a very wealthy person, and have no family because you got divorced and your kids don't speak to you anymore. So are you a success? Yeah. Well,
Mm.
Your scorecard says that financially you are a success, but at the end of your life, in the last 2 hours of your life, your kids don't speak to you, and you have no life partner
Mm.
to talk to say goodbye to, because they will not be present for you. How is that something that's considered successful? And you can't take the money with you. And then uh, from a family standpoint, so from a financial standpoint, it's really easy to measure success. Am I earning more than I did last year? And then am I progressing towards my ultimate goal, which is retirement or financial independence, things like that? I think that's the easy thing to measure. Family wise, is how good of people are the children that I'm raising? Does my wife respect me? Does she sacrifice for me like I sacrifice for her? Am I doing the best job I can as a husband and father? Um, are my kids going to be able to contribute to the world as good citizens?
Mm.
Um, do are my kids have my kids been able to learn as much as they could while they're under my charge? Are they respectful? Are my kids liars? Um, you know, it's funny because you could tell me that, we talk, parenting is a big conversation that's rising in the US at the moment. But I can tell you with fairly good accuracy that my kids will not be out in the street doing the things that some people are doing. But how can I say
Mm.
that? Is because I consider part of my personal success the fact that I am engaged with them and I speak to them every day. And when they have a problem, they talk to me about that. Even as teenagers, they talk to me. They come to me and we actually talk about it. That to me is a successful. That to me is a success, right? Because it could be different. So, yeah, I think it depends on what vertical we're measuring, but I think that um, each one needs to be measured on his own merits.
Mm. That's wonderful, Micah. I was really excited when we set this up. I love talking to smart people like yourself. I love business, small businesses and what's needed to grow with them. I sold part of mine. I'm still with one now, and I just absolutely love it. Anybody who's listening, how can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, so there's a few ways. You can go to micah-logan.com. You can just fill out the contact form there. If you want to see random social media stuff, you can go to Micah Logan 1 on Instagram. And yeah, you can always reach me there. I think those are the two best places. If you want to see some of the stuff I'm writing on Forbes, go to Forbes.com, type in my name, and my articles will pop up. So that's those are the best ways to reach out to me. And I love having conversations. And yeah, tell me who you are.
Micah, Micah Logan, Logan, of course.com. We'll make sure to put it in the show notes. Micah, thank you so much for your time today, my friend. I hope when I'm next time in the greater Boston area, maybe we can have a cup of tea, as we both don't drink coffee.
That sounds good. And Joey, I have a gift for the people who are listening.
Oh,
Um,
great.
I came up with what's called a growth accelerator assessment for people who are in business who are looking to grow. Um, are you ready to grow or not? Who knows? You may be a business owner, you may not be. Fine, but it's an assessment that will let you know whether or not you're willing to grow. And so I have it for free for your audience, which I'll send to you.
Fantastic. Thanks again, Micah. You be well, and hope to see you soon.
Absolutely.
Thank you for listening and or viewing Joey Pinz Disciple Conversations. Please share this episode with one or two of your friends who you think may benefit from the episode. Our website, www.joeypins.com. There you'll find lots of resources and you could join our mailing list. Please follow us on all our social media, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Podcast information, the video version of our podcast is on YouTube. Please subscribe. Audio is on all major podcasting platforms. Please follow them. And if you like it, please consider giving 5-star rating. Would really appreciate that. Would you like to financially support the podcast? You can go to our Patreon site. Consider $5, $10, or $20 a month. There's all kind of plans that we have there. There's like a one-time payment. What is this podcast episode worth to you? $25, $50, $100, $500, $1,000, $5,000. You be the judge. You can go to our PayPal account to do that as well. Thank you again for listening or watching Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations.